How do you see this affecting businesses and individuals in our district, and what specific changes do you propose to the Act?
So the Affordable Care Act is anything but affordable. And look, our healthcare system was broken before the Affordable Care Act, but the Obamacare is the wrong diagnosis and the wrong cure. And while I'm talking to people around the community, what's happening is their premiums are going up. Again, at the Small Business Roundtable last week, we had somebody who had been providing healthcare for their employees for 15 years, and they're self-employed, but their plan basically just got dropped, and they were kicked to the exchange with the actual numbers actually going up, so it's unaffordable. I've had other employees that had 60 employees that have dropped them down to 48. There's some that are now hiring people part-time, so it's actually hurting our economy. And by the way, I spent the evening in the emergency room, not because I was sick, but shadowing an ER doc at one of the Tucson hospitals, and there's people coming in now. Just because you have insurance doesn't mean you have health care. Because the deductibles are so high, some of them cannot get access, they're not going to their appointments, they can't pay for their medicine, and so it's not actually helping people get healthier because these deductibles are so high. I believe in patient-centered healthcare, where decisions are between you and your doctor. And there's transparency and choice and health savings accounts. I mean, you don't have the Obama administration telling you what kind of insurance that you need. I believe we shouldn't be directing employers to have a mandate to carry insurance. It has been stifling our economy. And we've got to make sure that people can get insurance if they have pre-existing conditions. We've got to allow kids who are 26 to stay on their parents' insurance. That's fine. And women shouldn't be charged more than men. But the Obamacare answer is mandates, penalties, and taxes that are hurting the economy and not actually bringing the cost of healthcare down. This is complicated. I've spent a lot of time talking to thought leaders in the community, up in Tucson and down here in Sierra Vista, and I'm committed to moving forward with solutions that are actually going to allow healthcare to be affordable, which is not this act.
Well, this is a very important issue to everyone in the country, and I've certainly heard a lot about it from people in Cochise County and across the district. What they tell me is they like some things that are in the Affordable Care Act, and they don't like other things. And what they like, sir, who's laughing, they like not to have to be concerned about pre-existing conditions barring them from getting insurance. I had met a woman whose husband was denied insurance. He lost his job, and he had diabetes. He couldn't get insurance because he had a pre-existing condition. Under the Affordable Care Act, he now can get coverage, and his life has been extended because of that. I have opposed many of the provisions of the Affordable Care Act, and I'm on record, and that's part of the record I'm proud of. I fought against the individual mandate and the employer mandate, and voted for both bills that would have postponed those mandates to give people more time to understand the system and the system would work. I voted to remove the congressional perks. Did you know that every member of Congress should be in the Affordable Care Act? I am, and we should be. We shouldn't ask citizens to do anything we're not willing to do. But what's wrong with that is the congressional staff and congressmen and women, they get a subsidy. That's wrong. And when that came to pass, I voted for a bill that said no subsidy for me and for anyone else in Congress. And when it couldn't pass the Senate, my wife and I sat down at the kitchen table and said, what are we going to do? And what we felt the only ethical and right thing to do was to spend that money that we got in supporting local charities. So every penny of that subsidy we get every month goes to local charities all across this district. That's the right thing to do, and more members of Congress should stand up and refuse these perks. We need to fix this bill. My opponent says repeal it, but has no real solutions of how to fix it. I say keep it and fix the problems. Like all big laws, we have to fix the problem, and that's what I went to Congress to do. Not to be enslaved to anybody or answer to anybody in the Obama administration. I opposed them right down the line when they were wrong.
In 2009, on a bullhorn during the debate, advocating for the more extreme version of the bill, including the public option, on the one end. On the other end, a few months ago, in a closed-door Democrat retreat, it was leaked out, no press was supposed to be there, that Ron Barber was praising Obama for his leadership on Obamacare. It's in BuzzFeed, you can check it out. Like, you can't be for Obamacare and be against paying for Obamacare, okay? Because the taxes that you say you're against are actually the $1 trillion that actually pay for this monstrosity. So we need thoughtful solutions, and taxpayers would rather have their money in their pockets and not given to members of Congress for you to actually give to a charity. They'd rather have it in their pocket so they could give it to the charity of their choice. Instead of being a follower, leaders actually fix the problem. Instead of complaining about it, actually do something about it and get it done, because you are in Congress. Thank you.
What are your priorities in both spending cuts and funding increases? And please name some specific programs that you think should be targeted.
This is relatively easy, quite frankly. We have a report that comes out of the Governmental Accountability Office, the GAO, every single year. It identifies a whole range of programs in federal agencies that are either duplicative, don't work, unnecessary, or wrapped with fraud and abuse. And that amounts to almost $80 billion every single year. And what happens? Everyone says, oh, it's terrible, and then they put the report on the shelf. Working with the bipartisan working committee or group that I'm a part of, we've introduced legislation that would require committees of jurisdiction to vote up or down on every single one of those recommendations, to hold Congress accountable for those decisions that they are unwilling to make right now. So we have to make sure that we cut where we need to cut. And where I would plus up in our military, because we are hollowing out the Army, we are retiring platforms that we need, we're not building ships that we need. This is a dangerous and volatile world. We don't need a smaller military, we need a bigger military. And that's one of my priorities going into next year, along with border security. We have funding in border security, but we need more, and we need more technology as well as people. We need to fix the border security problem here in Cochise County, and that will be a priority of mine going forward. In terms of increasing expenditures, those are two areas of importance to me, and I believe they're really important to the people of this community, and that's what I'll be fighting for when it comes back to budget negotiations in the new year. But the other thing we're going to be fighting for is to make sure that the A-10 aircraft keeps flying and flying and flying, because it's the best close air support we could possibly have for our troops on the ground. That's why I fought a battle to mobilize a bipartisan coalition of Congress. 300 members of Congress voted for my amendment to keep the A-10 flying. That's a mission that has to keep flying, and we need the money to do it. That would also be a priority. It goes with the overall priority of supporting our military and our veterans.
Thank you. Great.
Look, we've got to get our budget under control. We're $17 trillion in debt and growing, and we have got to address the spending problem that we have here. But I'll tell you what I will not do. I will not balance the budget on the backs of the men and the women who served, like my opponent agreed to do. He voted for a budget, the Ryan Murray budget that came out of the negotiations last year, that balanced the budget on the backs of veterans. Behind closed doors, they decided, you know what, we don't want to cut all these other pet projects, so we're going to cut veterans benefits, disabled veterans, active duty military. And that thing came out, and those of us who have served and those who are watchdogs for veterans, we were outraged that that was included in that budget. But Mr. Barber, our current congressman, voted for that. He then makes excuses, and we try to fix that, but he voted for it. So look, we've got to sit down and we've got to address these issues. We've got to make sure we have a strong military. We live in a more dangerous world than I've ever seen in my lifetime. And we've got to make sure we have a military that is ready and able to address these threats. We've got to secure our border. We have got to make sure we are safe from the terrorists that are overseas, those that are on a generational challenge that are trying to hurt us. This is serious business, so we've got to go through that budget line by line. We've got to make sure we get out the waste, the fraud and abuse, the frivolous programs, the overlapping. There's $200 billion in that GAO report, but we've got to make sure that we are safe and secure, because we cannot have a strong economy if we don't have security. And we certainly can't pay for our security unless we have a strong economy. And so I'm committed to making sure that we have a budget that makes sense, but ensures that we are not balancing on the backs of veterans like Mr. Barber did.
The facts are this. The bill that we passed kept the government open for all services. And yes, it made an adjustment that I didn't agree with on the backs of veterans. And the day after that, along with colleagues, I introduced 3 pieces of legislation to restore those cuts. They were restored, I voted for it, and that is the real truth, not the half-truth that my opponent would like to suggest.